Alright guys, we're going to start our last chapter. Woo! Chapter 8, which is matrices, and how we're going to use matrices to handle those linear equations we did in chapter 7. Alrighty, so let's get ready to roll. Example 1. We're going to write what's called an augmented matrix. For the system. Okay, so I'm going to give you a system. 3x minus 2y plus 5z equals 31. Y plus 3z equals 5. Negative 2x minus 5y plus 3z equals 11. Now, the idea behind matrices is that, theoretically, it's supposed to make your work a lot simpler. You guys are going to probably fight them for a little bit, but trust me, they do make life so much easier. Okay? Alright, so a matrix, if you have not seen one, some of you saw them in algebra, is going to be this great big bracket thing. And it's going to have rows and it's going to have columns. Okay, what I'm going to do is draw a bar down mine. Since it's an augmented matrix, it's going to have the coefficients of the numbers here and your answers here. So on this side of the bar, I'm going to put 31, 5, and 11. What goes over here in the first column are your x's. So let's do his first column. He's got a 3x. This guy has no x, so we put a 0, and he has a negative 2x. The middle column will be my y values. So I'm going to put a negative 2. The coefficient of that y is 1, and the coefficient of this y is negative 5. And now I do my z's. So his coefficient is 5, 3, and 3. And that's your augmented matrix. Now we're going to use augmented matrix to help us solve systems. Alright? So step 2 is going to be write a system of linear equations from a matrix and solve. So write the system of linear equations then solve. Okay, so I have my augmented matrix. Remember, the first column represents x, the second column represents y, the last column represents z. So my first row would be x plus y plus 0z, I don't need to write it, equals 3. My second row has no x, it's y plus 3 halves z equals negative 2. My last row has no x, no y, z is equal to 0. Well, the good news is right here. Can you tell that you already know what z is? Now I can use that information to come here to help me find what y is. And I can use that information to come here and find what x is. Okay, so now I'm going to take this equation and say y plus 3 halves of z is equal to negative 2, but we just found out that z was 0, so y plus 0 equals a negative 2, so y is negative 2. Now I'm going to use both this piece of information to come back up here to the first guy. Alright, so I'm going to pull him over to here, and I know that x plus y is equal to 3, and we just found out that y was negative 2, so I get x minus 2 equals 3, so x is 5. Y is 2. So my ordered pair would be 5, negative 2, 0. But realize, not all our beautiful little equations are going to start out that nice. Alright, let's try one more of these before we get into the real meat of the lesson. Alright, so this time we're going to do a 4-row augmented. So 1, 2, negative 1, 0, 2. 0, 1, 1, negative 2, negative 3. 0, 0, 1, negative 1, negative 2. 0, 0, 0, 1, 3. Okay? So we're going to go through each one and we're going to write an equation. Now this time do you realize I have 4 variables and 4 equations? Looks like fun, right? So we're going to call this W, X, Y, and Z. So my first row would be W plus 2X minus Y equals 2. And this row is X plus Y minus 2Z equals a negative 3. And this row is Y minus Z equals a negative 2. And my last row is Z equals 3. So again, I know what Z is. Now I just keep working my way up each time. Alright, so I'm going to go to this equation next. Y minus Z is equal to negative 2, but we just know that Z is 3. So do you agree that Y is 1? Alright, that's another piece of the puzzle. Now I can use these two to help me get X. So I have X plus Y minus 2Z is equal to negative 3. We're looking for X, but we know Y is 1. We know Z is 3. So now I'm going to get X plus Y minus 6 equals a negative 3. So X minus 5 equals a negative 3. So X is 2. Now use all this information into the top. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and I have W plus 2X minus Y is equal to 2. I now know X, I know Y, and I can find W. So X is 2, Y is 1, so I get W plus 4 minus 1 is equal to 2. So W is negative 1. Now, it's still an ordered pair. It's just going to have 4. W, X, Y, and Z. So negative 1, 2, 1, 3. So, how are we going to use all this? Let's talk a little bit about matrix row operations. Number 1, 2 rows may be interchanged. Alright, so I can swap things around. I can move row 1 to row 3 and row 3 to row 2. I can do anything I want to do. I can multiply any row by a non-zero number. So I can multiply by fractions, I can multiply by decimals, whole numbers, positives, negatives, as long as it's not a 0. And I can combine 2 rows by addition. What you want is to do all this manipulating so that you end up with a matrix that has 1s on the diagonal and 0s on this side. I could care less what numbers end up in these stars. But I need 1s on the diagonals and 0s below. This is called Gaussian elimination. Okay, it was by a mathematician, Gauss. G-A-U-S-S-I-A-N, elimination. And that's what we're now going to attempt to do. So we're going to manipulate these matrices to force these zeros and ones. Alright, you ready for the fun? Here we go. If you're not at a fresh sheet, get a fresh sheet. Alright, example 3. Use matrices to solve. 3x plus y plus 2z equals 31. X plus y plus 2z equals 19. X plus 3y plus 2z equals 25. Alrighty? Step 1. Write the augmented matrix. Alrighty, so we can do that. We need 3 rows and 4 columns. So my answers again go over here, 31, 19, 25. So my first row has, well, let's just do our first column, my x values. I have 3, 1, 1. Here I have 1, 1, 3, and 2, 2, 2. Alright, here's where the fun begins. Step 2, get a diagonal of 1. With zeros underneath. You're allowed now to do a lot of things, okay? Once we fix a row, we do not want to swap it. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I could make some changes, right? I can swap people around. So I think, you know what? I want this first number, right? Think about where you guys are headed. You want it to be 1, 1, 1. 0, 0, 0. So right now I have a 3. If I leave him, do you see that I'd have to divide everybody by 3 to get him to be a 1? That's going to give me a mess of fractions. So let's not do that. Could I swap him? Alright, I can, right? I can swap him with this row, or I could swap him with the bottom row. But look right here. Do you see that that middle row already has something I need? So let's not mess with him. Let's just trade row 1 and row 3. Now what I like to do is I like to write off to the side what I've done. Okay, again, it helps me grade your papers. It helps you keep up with what you've done. Alright, so I'm going to swap row 1 and row 3. So I'm going to move row 3 up and row 1 down. And now I keep the middle row. Alright, so first thing I ask myself, in this first row, I need, let's go back up here for a minute. I need it to be a 1, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. Ooh, I need him to be a 1. Alright, so do I have my 1 in the corner? Yes. Okay, let's look at the next row. So the first row is good, we're done. We're not touching him. So the second row, I need this guy to become a 0. Right? Because that's what I need next, is him to become a 0. So who could I put with him to get me a 0? Well, look, if I put this one and this one together, right, a -1 and a +1, I'd get my 0. Alright, so now I want to do, let's see how we want to work it. I want him to be a 0, so if I take row 1 minus row 2, let's not do that. That would be subtraction, so let's not do that. How about if I take the negative of row 1 times, plus row 2. Alright, so I'm going to leave row 1 alone. 1, 3, 2, 25. He's going to stay. Now it says to take the negative 1 times row 1 and add it to row 2. Alright, so I'm going to take the negative 1 times 1 is negative 1 plus row 2, plus 1. Alright, let's do it again. Negative 1 of row 1, so negative 3 plus 1. Negative 2 plus 2. Negative 25 plus 19. Now, some people will try to do all this manipulating at once. When we get good, we're going to do that. But for right now, we're only going to focus on row 2. So it's going to take us a little bit of work, a little bit of writing. Alright? So let's just go ahead and fix. So I'm going to go back in. 1, 3, 2, 25 is going to stay. 3, 1, 2, 31 is going to stay. This row becomes negative 1 and 1 is 0. Woohoo! Negative 2, 0, and let's see, negative 25 and 19 is 6. Alright, let's see if I've made progress. Well, I have, right? I have my 1 here. I have my 0 here. Okay, so row 1 is totally done. Row 2 is almost done, right? I need this negative 2 to become a what? I need it to be a 1. So now I have to figure out, what am I going to do? In this next step, we don't want to combine things together, because if I add, I'm going to lose my 0. So after you've done your addition, now I want to figure out what can I multiply by to get this guy to be a 1. So do you agree that I can multiply a negative 1/2 times row 2? Because that's going to give me the 1 I need here and not affect my 0. Alright, so I'm going to come here and I'm going to tell myself that I am going to multiply row 2 by a negative 1/2. So again, the first row stays. 1, 3, 2, 25, 3, 1, 2, 31. That row stays. This row I'm going to multiply by a negative 1/2. The 1/2 of 0 is 0. 1/2 of negative 2. Negative 1/2 times negative 2 is 1. Negative 1/2 times 0 is 0. And negative 1/2 of 6 is negative 3. Alright, let's look. I've got my 1 here. Life is good. I have a 0. Life is good. I have a 1. Life is good. Alright, so I am now done with row 1, and I am now done with row 2. I now only want to concentrate on row 3. My first thing is to get this guy to become a 0. Alright, so let's go back to the drawing board. Let's write down row 1. Let's write down row 2. I do not want to do anything to those rows, but I can do something with row 3. So what can I add to a 3 to get my 0 that I need? Oh, I need 3 and a negative 3. So what could I do to these rows to get me a negative 3? Oh, well, can't I do negative 3 times row 1 plus row 3? So let's see what that gives me. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3 plus 3. Negative 3 times row 1 is negative 9 plus row 3 is 1. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6 plus row 3 is 2. Negative 3 times 25 is 75 plus row 3, 31. And that needs to be a negative 75, yes? Alrighty, let's see if that helped us. So again, the 1, 3, 2, 25 stays. The 0, 1, 0, negative 3 stays. This now becomes negative 3 and 3 is 0. That's a good thing. Negative 9 and 1 is negative 8. Negative 6 and 2 is 4. Sorry, negative 4. And let's see, negative 75 and 31 is a negative 44. Alright, so let's check. That's a 1. That's a good thing. This is a 0. This is a 1. This is a 0. Okay, here's my last problem. I need this guy to become a 0, right? I need him to become a 0. How do you get a 0? We're going to put things together, right? But now be careful. If I go all the way back up here, what's going to happen to that 0? He's going to become something else, right? If I try to do something times row 1, that's not going to stay a 0. So let's not go back to row 1. Let's only move forward. Alright, so what could I do to row 2 to get this negative 8 to go away? Well, can't I do 8 times row 2? Alright, let's see what that'll look like. And I know we're running over, so I'm going to try to go quick. So if you guys will just bear with me. We'll do the video tonight, we won't do any practice. Alright, so we're going to do 8 times row 2 plus row 3. Alright, so 8 times row 2. So 0 times 8 is 0 plus 0. That's good, I keep my 0. 8 times 1 is 8 plus a negative 8. Good. 0 minus 4. And 8 times negative 3 is negative 24 minus 44. Alright, let's see what that gains me. So I have 1, 3, 2, 25. 0, 1, 0, negative 3. 0, 0, negative 4. And hang on, where's that negative 24 coming from? So 8 times row 2, negative 24. Okay, so I've made a boo-boo. So let's just go ahead and stop the video here since I'm 2 minutes anyway, and let me figure out what I have done incorrectly. Alright, so we will finish this problem on Monday.